The morning my cardiologist told me I needed surgery, he didn't start with numbers. He started with silence, the kind doctors use when they're deciding how gently to change someone's life. Then he looked up from my chart and said, "Mr. Whitaker, we can't keep delaying this anymore. My name is Howard Whitaker. I'm 71 years old. I spent 42 years driving a delivery truck across Missouri, rarely taking a sick day, rarely asking anyone for help. I buried my wife Eleanor 6 years ago. Since then, I've learned something about growing older. The hardest part isn't the pain. It's realizing the people you once carried are now deciding whether you're worth carrying back. The surgery itself wasn't impossible. Insurance covered most of it, but there was one remaining payment, $3,200. Without it, they wouldn't schedule the operation. I nodded while the doctor explained everything, but honestly I only heard one sentence. "You have about a month before this becomes much more dangerous." I drove home to Springfield in complete silence. The radio stayed off. When you've spent 40 years solving your own problems, asking for help feels heavier than illness itself. I had 2 children. My oldest son, Brandon, was 45. He owned a chain of luxury car dealerships across southern Missouri. Big house, 3 vacation properties, pictures online beside sports cars he couldn't pronounce when he was 16. People called him successful. My daughter Emily was 38, a single mother. 2 boys. Worked full-time as a medical receptionist while cleaning offices 3 nights a week just to keep rent paid. Life had not been equally generous to my children, but I loved them equally. Or at least I tried to. 3 days later, I invited Brandon to lunch. We met at an expensive steakhouse he liked, because, as he once told me, people expect success to eat in successful places. He ordered before I even sat down. I ordered coffee. When the food arrived, I finally told him, "The doctor's scheduled heart surgery." He barely looked up. "I'm sorry to hear that. There's one problem." He cut another piece of steak. "Insurance? It leaves $3,200. He nodded once. Then came the sentence I'll remember for the rest of my life. So, I wondered if you could help." He leaned back in his chair. "Dad, just my name would have hurt less. I'm really trying to separate family from finances." I stared at him. "It's a surgery." "I know. I'll pay you back." He actually laughed. "It's not about paying me back." Then he picked up his glass. "You've got Emily." I frowned. "Emily barely makes enough to survive." He shrugged. "Ask your daughter." A pause. "I'm not your bank." The waitress arrived to refill our drinks. She looked from his untouched steak to my untouched coffee. Something about her expression told me she'd heard enough. I thanked Brandon for lunch, even though he'd made me pay for my own coffee. Then I walked out. Not angry, just smaller. Now tell me honestly, if your wealthy child refused to help save your life, would you ever ask again? Or would that one answer tell you everything you needed to know? Comment one chance if you believe family only gets one opportunity in moments like this. Or comment I'd still forgive if you think parents should always leave the door open. I didn't call Emily. I couldn't. How could I ask the child already working 2 jobs to solve a problem her millionaire brother wouldn't touch? So I said nothing. 4 days passed. Apparently Brandon mentioned my surgery during a family group text. Not because he was worried, because he complained that I'd put him in an uncomfortable position. Emily arrived at my house that evening, carrying a plain white envelope. She looked exhausted. Dark circles beneath her eyes, still wearing her work scrubs. "Dad," she said quietly. I heard. I sighed. "Emily?" She placed the envelope on my kitchen table. Inside was $3,200, $20 bills, 50s, a few hundreds. Every dollar counted carefully. I looked at her. "Where did you get this?" She smiled. "It's okay." "No, it'll be okay." "Emily." She finally admitted it. "It was next month's rent." The room disappeared around me. "You can't do that." "I'll figure something out." You have 2 boys. They need their grandfather." I pushed the envelope back toward her. "I can't take this." She pushed it back. "You spent 30 years making sure Brandon and I never worried about food." She smiled through tears. "Please let me worry about you once. That sentence broke something inside me. Not because of the money, because she offered everything she had. Without being asked, that night I couldn't sleep. I kept staring at the envelope on my kitchen counter. Brandon had millions. Emily had rent money. Only one of them had given me everything. The next morning my attorney called. Her name was Diane Mercer. She had handled Eleanor's estate years earlier. "Howard," she said, "I've been reviewing your file." "My file?" "Your wife left instructions." I frowned. "What instructions?" "There are documents you were never supposed to open unless one of your children proved exactly who they were." I drove to Diane's office immediately. She placed 2 sealed envelopes on her desk. One marked, "If Brandon chooses money over family." The other, "If Emily remains who she has always been." I couldn't breathe. "Eleanor wrote these?" Diane nodded. 3 months before she passed. Inside Emily's envelope was a handwritten letter. "Howard, if you're opening this, our little girl chose people over money again. Please don't let kindness become her punishment." Beneath the letter sat another document. A trust, one I knew nothing about. Years before Eleanor became sick, she'd quietly inherited stock from an uncle. Instead of spending it, she'd allowed it to grow. Very quietly, very privately. The trust was now worth nearly $2.8 million. I stared at Diane. I never knew. She wanted it that way. And Brandon? Diane slid his envelope toward me. Inside was only 1 page. Love should never have to compete with wealth. If Brandon ever forgets that, don't rescue him from the lesson. I cried harder than I had at Eleanor's funeral, because somehow she was still protecting me, and she was still protecting our children from becoming the worst versions of themselves. The surgery happened the following Tuesday, not with Emily's rent money. Diane arranged immediate funding from the trust. Before surgery, I handed Emily her envelope back. She looked confused. "I don't need it anymore." She started crying. "I was afraid you wouldn't let me help." I squeezed her hand. "You already did." The operation lasted 4 hours. Recovery took longer. During those weeks, Emily visited every evening. She brought homemade soup. Her boys played cards with me. The hospital nurses started calling them Room 214's grandchildren. Brandon came once. For 12 minutes, he checked emails while sitting beside my bed. Before leaving, he said, "Glad everything worked out." Then he walked away. A week after I came home, Diane invited both children to her office. Neither knew why. Brandon arrived first. Expensive suit, luxury watch, confident smile. Emily arrived 10 minutes later, wearing grocery store shoes she'd glued together herself after one heel broke. Diane opened Eleanor's letters. She read Brandon's first. Silence filled the room. Then she read Emily's. My daughter couldn't stop crying. Finally, Diane explained the trust. Brandon's eyes widened. Mom left almost $3 million. "Yes. When do we divide it?" Diane looked directly at him. "We don't." She slid the trust documents across the table. The beneficiary line contained exactly one name. Emily Whitaker. Nothing else. Brandon laughed. "That's ridiculous. It is legally binding." "What about me?" Diane answered calmly. Your mother believed inheritance should reward character, not biology." He turned toward me. "Dad, you knew." "I found out after you refused my surgery." His face changed. For the first time in years, he looked frightened. Not because of losing money, because he finally understood what he'd really lost. He looked at Emily. "You'd actually keep it?" Emily stared back. Then she said the most beautiful sentence I've ever heard. "I'd trade every dollar if Mom was still here." The room became very quiet. That's the difference between people who love money and people who simply love people. Emily later bought a modest house, not a mansion, just somewhere her boys could finally each have their own bedroom. She kept working another year because she said, "I want them to see that blessings don't replace responsibility." Brandon called me dozens of times after that meeting. He apologized. He blamed stress, business pressure, bad timing. Maybe some of it was true. But there are moments in life when people don't reveal who they are. They confirm it. The day I needed $3,200 wasn't really about surgery. It was about character. One child measured the request against his bank account. The other measured it against her heart. Today my health is good. Every Sunday Emily and the boys come for dinner. Sometimes we talk about Eleanor. Sometimes we just sit on the porch watching the sunset. And every now and then I remember that envelope, filled with rent money. $3,200. It wasn't the largest gift I've ever received. Not even close. But it was the most expensive gift anyone has ever given me. Because my daughter paid for it with security, she could not afford to lose. My son thought wealth was measured by what stayed in your account. My wife knew better. Real wealth is revealed by what you're willing to give away when someone you love needs you most.